Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings of peace, dear viewers, and welcome to another episode of She in Islam. Ramadan Kareem, and we're hoping you're enjoying your Ramadan and that you're getting out of Ramadan not just hunger and thirst, but also something that will nourish your soul, inshallah. With us today is my dear sister and friend, Sharifa Carlos. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
How are you, dear Sharifa?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Sharifa has a master's degree in composition and rhetoric from the United States, and she's currently working as an English instructor in the College of Technology here in Kuwait, teaching adults, I think, technical writing, business writing. What exactly are you
Well, basically
teaching?
I'm teaching English for special purposes.
Yes, technical terms and
technical terms, English for chemical engineering.
chemical engineering,
yes.
that's right, mashallah, mashallah.
And I'm also teaching communication and writing
Yes.
to the students as well.
Mashallah. And I think you're also an international speaker on Islamic topics, right?
Yes, I've traveled
travel
all over the world.
extensively
Yes, I've
doing-
traveled all over the world giving lectures about Islam, talking to people about Islam, and inviting people to come to Islam and to come back to Islam.
Right, mashallah. But you're not born a Muslim, are you?
No, no. Well, we're all in a way born. I mean,
Right,
we're born in the
I'm-
fitrah.
yes.
But I was raised as a Catholic, and I spent my entire life as a Catholic, and I was very strong in my faith.
So how old were you when you converted?
I had just turned 21.
21, mashallah. So you spent quite a bit large part of your life in the early years not being or not living in a Muslim lifestyle or being a Muslim.
Exactly. And it wasn't until I started to study Islam in order to be part of this group that was trying to destroy Islam. And I started
What an irony.
Yes, it is. I started reading about Islam and learning about, Quran and Hadith and how to twist it and to make it say what I wanted it to say and to take people away from practicing Islam. And at that point, while I was reading it, I saw the beauty of Islam. I saw the logic of Islam, and I saw how everything makes sense. And I basically had no choice but to accept it. Alhamdulillah.
SubhanAllah. So how long were you into that study or with that group for you to have come to the point where you studied Islam and seen the other side, meaning that that's actually what you wanted and not wanted to destroy, but that's actually what you wanted to join?
From the beginning of learning and reading the Quran, I knew that Islam was right. But in actuality, I didn't want Islam. I just had it in mind as an oppressive, horrible religion where women have no rights, where women are beat daily. Yes, where women are, kept by their husbands, locked in their homes, and they're covered from head to toe, and they have no saying, no rights. And because I still had that idea, it was hard for me to let go and accept that what Islam had to say was true. And alhamdulillah, after 3 years, that's when I finally said, that's it, this is the truth, I can't deny it any longer.
So initially, Sharifa, or Yvonne at that time,
Yes.
right? The savior of Muslim women from oppression.
Yes.
became Sharifa, the Muslim woman, whoever is not oppressed.
Inshallah, and definitely.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Well, that kind of leads us to our topic, and one of those very sensitive topics, and of course one of those topics that the Western media will drag through the dirt at any point, any chance they can get. And also one of those topics that unfortunately Muslims are very sensitive about sometimes, which is polygyny.
Yes.
So, we hopefully will clear up some of the misconceptions in this episode about polygyny, hopefully soften people's hearts to the idea of polygyany.
Yes, I hope so.
To be more open-minded about the fact that it does have a place in society.
And it has
if it's
a
done
benefit.
properly, if it's got its benefits, if done, it has its rules and regulations and so on. We will go into those details, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So what exactly is polygyny?
Well, basically, polygyny, as opposed to polygamy, is having more than one wife.
Right.
And in Islam, the man is allowed up to 4. In the Quran, it says what the meaning of is that marry from your women 2 or 3 or 4. But if you cannot be just with them, then only 1. Now, the funny thing about this is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts out by telling you what to do, He starts out with the number 2. He doesn't start saying, get married, and if you're not able to take care of, if you're able to handle it, take 2 or 3 or 4. He says, he starts with 2. He starts with the number 2. Marry from your women 2 or 3 or 4, and then if you can't do it, then only 1. So it's almost like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the man that the standard is 2, 3, or 4, and that 1 is the odd, the unusual, the not normal one. And this actually, throughout the centuries, it was the case. And it was the case not just among Muslims, but among all the religions of the earth. And it wasn't until much later in Christianity that the Christians changed their idea of polygamy, and with them and the power and rise of the Christian nations into political power around the world, all the other nations as well started to change.
Right. So why do you think Islam is allowing polygyny?
I think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything better than we do.
Yes, of course.
Allah knows who and what He created. He knows the nature of man and the nature of woman. He also knows the amounts of people that He creates. He also knows that throughout time, especially because we as human beings are a very warring people, we do get into war a lot, and a lot of men die.
Exactly, yes.
Because even the norm among every civilization is that the men go to war and the women stay home. Not that a woman cannot, is that this is not the norm. The woman is normally the provider and caretaker of the children, while the man is normally the provider and caretaker of all of us.
Right, we'll hold that thought for a minute. Inshallah, we'll go on break and definitely come back to that. Please stay with us, dear viewers. We'll be back in a minute.
One song can change a moment. One idea can change a world. One step can start a journey. But a prayer can change even the impossible.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers. We are on a sensitive issue in Islam, and especially it's very sensitive with the sisters in Islam, the issue of polygyny. And we hope that with today's show, inshallah, we may soften your view, inshallah, change your perspective a little bit on this issue and let you see both sides of the coin. So, dear Sharifa, Islam, we've just established in the Quran, has permitted polygyny, up to 4 wives. Now, is that something that Islam invented? Is that something that is completely new in history that came with Islam? Or is it something that has possibly existed before and is still existing in certain cultures?
Well, actually, polygyny is something that has always existed. And as I said, it was in Christianity, it was in Judaism, it was in many different religions and cultures throughout time. When it came to the Muslims in Arabia, when the verses were sent down about polygyny, this was something that was actually limiting it, because the Arabs before Islam had multiple wives with no rules, no regulations, no limits. Yes, exactly. There were absolutely no limits. So one man could have 50 wives, and how he treated them and their rights and his responsibilities were not as easily defined as they were once Islam said 4. That's it.
So Islam actually came to harness this practice of polygyny, to give it a framework, to give it rules and regulations to something that was already existing. It's not something that Islam all of a sudden invented, like many times in the media in the West is portrayed, that Islam is the invention, you know, of the inventor of polygyny.
Yeah, no, actually, even in America, there is polygyny. The show Sister Wives
Oh, yes.
Which is about a polygamous family in the West, in America.
Mormon family, that's right.
They're a kind of Christian, and they believe in it and they practice it.
Right.
It's not limited to Islam. There are many cultures in Africa that still practices. There are actually people in China who practice it, who are not Muslims. So it is still practiced around the world. The difference is that within Islam there are rules and there are regulations. And those rules and regulations must be followed. It's not like an open blank check for a man, go out and take 4 wives. You don't have to take care of them, you don't have to do anything. It's
Islam, actually protecting women. The rules and regulations of polygyny in Islam protect women.
Exactly.
Right.
They do.
Yeah, and you know, you're saying, for example, in other religions, there's polygyny, like in Christianity, especially in the Mormon faith, which is an offshoot of some kind of Christianity. You said in China, Africa. How about in everyday American culture? I mean, we're not talking about legalized polygyny.
No, but actually, how many times are men told, play the field? Many times a man may have 10, 15 girlfriends. He might have 2 girlfriends.
Even if he's not told, they do play the field.
They do.
Right? I mean,
they most definitely.
It's not the norm for a man to be monogamous, even in a Western marriage, right? It's actually more of a norm percentage-wise. I'm not talking about acceptance.
Percentage-wise, when they've gone through the research, the vast majority of men do eventually have affairs. And I mean, we have the famous Bill Clinton and his very publicized affairs. And, you know, we can see it in the known celebrity type people.
Even with men who are married to beautiful Hollywood stars.
Exactly.
So that's not exclusive, let's say, for a man to have, let's say, a plain wife, and he's looking for, you know, something better out there, something even, mashallah, in relationships where the partners both are quite attractive.
Exactly. So it is something that can actually be based on genetics. The male genetics there are hormones that are in play, like testosterone, that actually increase the libido of the man.
Right.
And this thing makes the man different from the woman in wanting to have more than one partner.
That's
exactly.
Right. You know, I read a study in evolutionary science, and it's Western study. It was a Western, United States college course on the evolutionary psychology, and it was talking about men's polygynous makeup, his thoughts, and it goes. They're trying to explain that by, back in the Stone Age, the offspring had very little chance of survival. So maybe out of 10 children that a man would produce, 1 would stay alive, or 2 would possibly have the chance of surviving. So men would, in those days, try to have as many offspring as possible. If he tried to do that with 1 woman, it would only happen every 9 months at the easiest, let's say average once a year, right? So you would be able to have 1 child once a year. So in a span of 10 years, he would have 1 surviving offspring. Whereas if he was able to marry or mate with plenty of women, he would have, in that 1 year, he would be able to have 10 offspring and 1 surviving.
Yes.
So it was really a matter of survival of humanity.
Well,
that kind of,
if you take a look at Western research, you find that they're looking towards evolutionary, and they're also looking towards even the financial motives for polygamy becoming, or polygyny becoming something that's important, and how as women have a greater economic viability, that what happens is that she has less of a need for a polygynous situation. But I've done an experiment myself. I taught in many colleges in the United States, and in almost every single class, I always allowed the students at one time or another to sit, and the whole class, the only thing they're going to do is ask me questions about who and what I am, because they're all curious about my Islam.
Can we come back to the experiment?
Yes.
Just 1 second, inshallah. We'll go for a break, and then I definitely want to hear about that experiment. That would be interesting, inshallah. So please stay with us, dear viewers, to hear about Sister Sharifa's experiment in U.S. colleges. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers. And we just left you a few minutes ago with the topic of polygyny and Sister Sharifa doing an experiment in colleges in the United States on exactly that subject.
Yes, I didn't actually set out to do an experiment, but I always allow my students to ask me whatever questions they want. Because me coming into a classroom in America as a professor, and I'm covered from head to toe, always, of course, the students are going to wonder why. You know, what is she doing? What is she? Why is she covered like this?
Curiosity, they're going to be asking questions.
Is she a nun? What is she? So I would allow them to ask questions, and invariably every single time they asked me a question, it always came to polygamy.
Of course.
Every time there always had to be a question about polygamy.
That's why we're kind of bringing it up in this program, because it is on everybody's tip of their tongue when they're dying to ask somebody about Islam. It's women's rights and polygyny.
Yes.
Right.
So when they ask me about it, I always tell them, look, I'm going to do a little experiment in this. Now, I notice that in every single class that I've ever taught, where it was a mixed class, the women outnumbered the men, every time. And what I've seen in terms of research is that in the world, and I mean the world as basic, I'm not talking about places like China where it's off kilter and it's not normal, but throughout the history of man, in the world, women of childbearing age normally are more than men of childbearing age. Okay, if you keep it to those two things. So, subhanAllah, I will tell them, look, take a look in this classroom. If you were all following your own religion, forget about Islam, you follow your own religion. In your own religion, relationships outside of marriage are forbidden in every religion in the world. You have to have marriage. If you're going by the standard religion, in Christianity and Judaism, you're not supposed to have relationship outside of marriage. So let's follow your religion. I'm going to take this classroom and I'm going to pair you off. And I pair them off. You are married to him. You are married to him. You are married to him. And I will run out of men. Usually there's 5 or 6 girls at the end of the class. And I'm like, you see you 5 girls? You're never going to get married. You're never going to know what it is to have a husband. You're going to hope and wish that one of these women will die so that you can have a man in your life.
Or, unfortunately, go of the choice of then having an illegal relationship,
I'm saying,
just to have that sense of security and being loved and so on and so forth.
But if you're following your religion,
which
says that you can only have one man with one woman, okay, even if that man is miserable with that woman, because actually, if you go back to the majority of the religions, divorce isn't allowed either.
Exactly.
So we're going to follow your religion, what your culture is teaching, one man, one woman. So now all of you will never have children. You're never going to have a man. You're never going to be able to have anything in your life that stimulates family life other than being with your brothers and sisters. So now, how many of you would be willing to accept to be a second wife? I normally get one who kind of like, sort of raises her hand.
Because of course she's got peer pressure there going on.
Exactly. So then I say, you know what? Let's add to it, because you know what? In Islam, there are rules. So now whatever he buys her, he buys you. He has to minimum your housing, your food, your clothes, your medical needs, your basic needs as a human being, just the basics. He has to provide those. That's his job. So now whatever he provides for her, at the same level, he has to provide for you. Now how many of you are willing to do it? And normally another one will put her hand up. And then I'll say, let's add to that, because that's not all. He has to take care of your children and do everything for you, and all, like if anything needs taking care of, he's supposed to do it. Something needs fixing, he has to fix it.
Take your car to the garage.
Take your car to the garage. Do everything for you. You don't have to do a thing. You sit at home. Even technically, most of the scholars say you don't even have to cook and clean. Your job is to be his wife and to raise his children. And he has to do this, what he does for her, he has to do for you in an equitable way. I mean, not that he has 6 children here and he has 1 child there, that he gives you a 6-bedroom house. But he gives you a house in the same level that suits your needs.
Everybody's got a room.
Exactly.
So let's say, right.
So if these are the stipulations, and usually if I have anybody at the end who doesn't raise their hand, it's only 1. And I said, for those of you who raised your hand, it's legal. For the rest of you, stay single. It's up to you. This is your right. If you prefer to have a relationship where the man has no rights and no responsibilities over you, as they do in Western society where men have mistresses, and she has no rights whatsoever, she doesn't even have a right to insurance for her and her children through her husband.
Or he might shower the mistresses with more things
or
than
he might
even shower, because the gifts and the little extras and the trips and the traveling and the whatnot, right?
Yes. So if you don't feel that you want the fairness, if you want the situation where it's not fair, that's fine too. It's up to you. It's your choice. Nobody's going to tell you, marry this man. He has 4 wives or he has 3 wives. You must marry him. No. You have a right to say, no, I don't want you. I will wait for someone else.
Exactly.
And then...
And it's kind of inevitable to happen. I mean, we're not saying in every household, but the statistics show that even in monogamous societies, he will eventually stray. So the percentage, the chance of it happening is very likely.
Well, take a look at the modern society in America right now. By the time they reach the end of high school, about 1/3 of the girls have children outside of marriage. And from those 1/3, half of them have 2 or 3 children from different fathers. And these people are not necessarily responsible for those children. And you see the results in American society as an absolute result from this. You don't have the stable family environment, and that is very important in Islam. Yes. We believe that society as a whole has a right over the individual desires.
Of course, mashallah. So it does protect women, and it does exist everywhere. Basically, the phenomenon of polygyny, whether it is legalized or illegal or haram even, it's there. And we'll be back, inshallah, in a minute, dear viewers. Please stay with us.
M is for the million things she gave me. O means only she's growing old. T is for the tears she shed to save me. H is for her heart of purest gold. E is for her eyes with love light shining. R means right, and right she'll always be. Put them all together, they spell mother, a word that means the world to me.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers. We are on the kind of touchy subject of polygyny in Islam, but we hope that with our little talk on this subject, we can change the perspective of our viewers, who sometimes only see it from one side and not from all sides, who also don't understand that polygyny is not specific to Islam, that actually Islam has come to regulate a practice that has been since the beginning of time.
Yes.
And that is and according to Western studies, not Islamic studies, is actually in the makeup, in the physical makeup of the male to be polygynous. So we are not the ones who are saying, we're not the ones who invented it, we are not the ones who are saying a man must be polygynous. This is actually his physical makeup. Islam came to regulate it, to give the woman her rights.
Yes, exactly.
So have you ever seen polygyny actually work in real life? You know, many men might say, yeah, it works, my family, so, but we as women say, yeah, sure. You know, I mean, that's what you say. But have you actually seen it personally work for some families? Yeah, actually, in
several situations I have seen it work. But let me preface this by saying that when it works, it's when men do what they're supposed to do. They're fair, and they give the equal balance to all the families. When they don't do this, it causes an imbalance in the family, and that causes problems. Definitely. At the same time, the women cannot go into it with the idea that this is a horrible thing, that I have been oppressed, that I have been harmed, that there's something wrong with me.
Because many times women in the society or around her in her
Right.
community, whether it's her own sisters or friends, will actually, when this happens to a woman, when it happens in her family, they would definitely say, well, what did you do wrong? Why aren't you good enough for your husband? Maybe you didn't dress nice enough, or maybe you had some kind of something
but
missing
it doesn't
you,
have
right?
to be this. It doesn't have
Exactly.
to be. I've
Exactly.
seen situations where men have absolutely gorgeous wives who are intelligent, who are, very good with them, and yet still the man has this need to go outside. But I've seen it worked, and I've seen the best examples that I have are men that marry women that have children.
Yes.
There was an example in California, in Los Angeles. There was a young Syrian man, and he had 4 wives. And each of his wife was a widow with children, and all of them were older than him. He had married them for the sake of Allah, and they loved each other. They would go out together, you would see them hugging, you would see them, taking care of each other's children. I also saw a beautiful example in South Carolina. The Imam of our masjid, mashallah, he had the 2 wives, and he was very good with them, and they loved each other. The 2 women loved each other because they know that there is good in this, and they felt that there wasn't some kind of inequality, and this is very important.
So it really, it depends on, first of all, we just want to just a quick summary of, so it's a choice. It's not an obligation, but a choice. And the people that in that lifestyle that are making the choice, it just all depends on how they handle this special lifestyle choice and family style that can either make it work and make it work beautifully, both from the man's side and the women's side, or can destroy.
And one last thing, in any marriage, whether it's monogamous or polygynous, there's no such thing as perfect.
Exactly.
There's no perfect man, there's no perfect woman, and we have to be patient with the imperfections in each other.
Exactly.
Otherwise, nothing can ever work.
Yes, and if we stick to the regulations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the rules and the rights of the women, things can possibly work. Although, like we said, dear sisters, this is a choice. It is not an obligation. Your dear sisters also need some patience. Men need patience, women need patience, inshallah. But we hope you opened your mind a little bit to this subject of polygyny. Go ahead and research it a little bit more on your own, inshallah. We have seen it work. I've personally seen it work in amazing ways. You've seen it work, mashallah. So keep your minds open, and we hope you have a wonderful iftar. Pray your Taraweeh prayers, inshallah. Let your soul get nourished this Ramadan, and we will see you, inshallah, in another episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.